So, hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 246 today of Level Up. 60 minutes, of course, of live Q&A where your questions really do drive the show. Today, we're going to continue our discussion on how to facilitate like a pro, how this hidden superpower within ourselves can really elevate your career to the next level. If you're watching on YouTube, then you can find out so much more about what we do, of course, in our channel. So do give this video a like and click on that subscribe button to find out so much more. Ella today is over in the social chat. So if you're joining us live, please do let her know your name and, of course, the city from where you're joining around the world. She's going to post some links so that you may vote up the questions that you would most like answered by the panel. And of course, for you to be able to add your own as well. If your question is selected, then your name's going to appear in the credits at the end of the show. So do get those in early and stay with us to see all of that happening. So let's jump straight in and meet our expert panel for today. Cath Convery is the co-founder of Explosive Learning Solutions here in the UK, an organisation working in risk, change and project and contract management, an experienced facilitator. Cath's expertise is embedded these days, at least, in the contract management lifecycle, providing expert advice, education and training to her clients. Welcome back to Level Up, Cath.
Thank you so much, Nick. Great to be here. I'm very excited to join in this conversation, as you said, part two. So building on the conversation we had previously, and a really experienced panel here that have done an awful lot of facilitation. Should be good fun.
Excellent. Thank you so much indeed, Cath. Malini Jayaganesh rejoins today, although I think from a different location. She's a strategic advisor and coach, of course, with ITSM Hub and a director emeritus of the Business Relationship Management Institute. With a lifelong purpose to elevate others, Malini has crafted her facilitation skills by running diversity and inclusion workshops and a whole variety of different activities throughout her professional life. Welcome back to Level Up, Malini.
Thank you very much, Nigel. I am joining today from Brisbane, and I'm really looking forward to the questions from our producers from around the world.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for giving us some of your late afternoon, early evening. Melissa Subban joins. She is a people strategist, of course, at the HappyFactor, where as the founder, she's built a high-performing team around the delivery of organizational agility and agile change management. Carving out her own unique path, Melissa sets the tone with her team and her clients. Welcome back to Level Up, Melissa.
Thanks so much, Nick. I'm really excited to be here. And I've been doing facilitation for very many years. And I am thoroughly interested in having this conversation and hearing from the different panelists.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks, Melissa. Great to have you joining from South Africa. Brilliant. Gary Gamp is the co-founder, of course, of a company called Smart Tasking, which focuses on really elevating other organizations to become, well, better, faster, and smarter, as the name suggests. He's also the author of a successful business podcast called The Company Doctor. So you may well have recognized his voice, even though you may not have met him in person. Inspiring others, of course, to build their professional networks and extend their capabilities. Gary coaches and mentors many people, and I have to say is a personal inspiration to me. Welcome back to Level Up, Gary.
Thank you, Nick, and what a great intro. Appreciate it. I was on the first episode, part one. The interaction was amazing from everyone on, so looking forward to equal engagement on this episode. Thanks very much.
I completely agree. Thank you very much. I would really like to echo that. We had some amazing contributions from sales colleagues on LinkedIn, actually, in episode one. So it'd be really lovely to hear from you, in particular, if that happens to be your role on the demand side of the business, as well as everybody who is running projects and working on the delivery side. Paul Sutton completes our on-screen expert panel today. He's senior trainer and lead consultant for project results and for non-such training. From business cases to benefits realization, Paul ensures that his clients fully understand how to get the very best from their people, processes and technologies, and is a constant user of advanced facilitation technique. Welcome back to Level Up, Paul. Lovely to see you.
Yes, and thank you. It's great to be back here again. I've done a number of these sessions and then I had a little bit of a break, but it's great to be back again and great to be with this fantastic lineup of experts. Got into facilitation as part of lots of other things that were going along, but I've been doing it for 35 years. and have been interested in how it evolves.
Excellent. Thank you so much indeed, Paul. And is it Wellington in New Zealand that you're joining from today?
It is Wellington, and actually in Miramar, where they make Lord of the Rings, and they've just announced another lot, so it'll all be busy.
Well, indeed. Well, and just for 2 weeks a year, you can rent your house out in Wimbledon in the UK during a particular tennis festival. So maybe you will find lots and lots of interesting people, descending on your neighbourhood when that filming begins. Wish you every success with all of that. Very good. Question master for today is Suchitra Jacob, who joins us from beautiful Bangalore in southern India. Welcome back to Level Up, Suchitra.
Hi, Nick. Hello to the panelists and our viewers. And I'm happy to be back again for this topic.
All right, excellent. Okay, well, look, we've got lots of people joining online, which is lovely to see. I was a little bit late this morning with the social link, but I can see you all joining now, so that's fantastic. Suchitra, I think we should start off with our first question to the panel.
Sure. So our first question is from yourself, Nick. In the panel's experience, why is facilitation a superpower that we should all grow and develop?
Okay, all right then. Now, I wanted to pose this question because I kind of feel passionately that it is. So it's slightly rhetorical, but nonetheless, help me out in your experience, please. That would be really fantastic. Cath, why don't you start us off and then we'll go to Gary.
Well, I think there are going to be so many different answers on this one. So I'm only going to talk about one thing, and that's really about empowering others. Facilitation really helps to empower different groups of people to be able to join in the conversation and to resolve wicked problems. It really helps with that co-design. And for me, it's all about empowerment of somebody who's quite quiet, but still has something really important to say, empowerment of the individual who would normally never speak in a meeting. It is so fabulous to do that. It's bringing in those different, that diverse thinking and that diverse conversation. For me, the part of the superpower that I really love is empowerment, Nick.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I love that phrase as well. It helps you solve wicked problems. I think we might quote that one onto the social chat. Thank you very much indeed, Cath. Great way to start off the show, actually. Gary, your thoughts, please, and then we'll hear from Malini.
Yeah, I was thinking, as you posed the question, I was thinking about, you can't fly a plane without a pilot. I think you can't have a meeting without a facilitator. So as a facilitator, you're a catalyst and a guide. And it's so important because we've all been to good meetings and bad meetings, and I think it's very hard to have a good meeting without a good facilitator. That's why it's a superpower.
And the emphasis there is on the outcome, and how it feels in the room. You can't have a good meeting. You can have an average meeting. You can have an appalling meeting. You can have a meeting which is very expensive but leads to little benefit for the participants or the organisation. But a good meeting, that's a very different thing. Really great answer. Thank you so much indeed, Gary. Malini, your thoughts, please, and then Melissa.
Nick, I think the impact of a good facilitator is often felt long after that particular session that they facilitated has actually finished. Right? And I like Gary's use of the word catalyst. So if as a good facilitator, you're a catalyst for shifting people's thinking. And there's an African saying: if you want to walk fast, walk alone. But if you want to walk far, walk together. And as a facilitator, to be able to bring people together and show them, how to walk together and walk far, I think is an extremely meaningful thing to do in any organizational context.
I'm struggling to keep up to date. Right at the very beginning, we got huge value from our experienced panelists. I love that phrase as well, that African saying about walking fast, you can walk alone. But if you do want to walk far, then you need to walk together with others. And you're certainly right, that ignition point, the catalyst, to Gary's point a little earlier about making that difference in the room, is a fabulous thing when you witness it firsthand. Thank you, Malini. Melissa, you do a lot of this at the Happy Factory. You kind of figure out, how to make that breakthrough and create those, endorphin-filled moments for your clients. Your thoughts on this one?
Thanks, Nick. For me, I think being human, is creating meaning out of life. And in order to create meaning out of life, we need to be able to communicate effectively. And facilitation is one of those ways that we can do that, the way that we can communicate better. And when you communicate better, you human better. And if you think about facilitation, it's helping people focus their thoughts, helping people focus their energies, and then collectively helping people move from one point to another. And I think that's a really special thing. So if that's not a superpower, I don't know what is.
I completely agree. And no lycra is needed, by the way, as far as I'm aware, anyway, for expert facilitation. And so I think even gentlemen of my age are probably okay. Cath, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just want to bring in the concept of clarity. For me, a really good facilitator has done an awful lot of work before they've even got into the room. They've simplified the questions, they've simplified the direction of the meeting, and they therefore are able to give clarity to those attending, to give clarity to the complex situation that they're working within. For me, this superpower is also about clarity.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And we may explore that theme actually about what you need to do beforehand a little bit later on in the show. I think that is something that's incumbent upon good facilitators, is proper, thorough preparation. In the meantime, though, let's go do a bit of a shout out to our producers online, of course, who are our audience. Nancy joined us from Woodley here in the UK with an emoji, which has been translated by the software into hand pink waving. So there you go. Thank you very much indeed, Nancy, for joining us from the UK. We kind of get it, even though it's the long-handed version of that. Marion joins us, colleague of APMG, actually based over in Houlton, over in the Netherlands. Really appreciate you joining today, Marion. Great to have you as part of the team. And Idara joins. Now, a lot of you will recognize Idara because she is a regular supporter of Level Up and makes a great contribution in our social chat, and really does help to shape better shows for us. So thank you so much indeed, Idara, for joining today. Really great to have you online. Now, if you're watching us online and you've not yet introduced yourself, then now's the time to do that. Do say hello, give us your name, please, and the city, where in the world, in other words, you're joining from. It's nice to get a sense of the different places around the world who are tuning in, and also, your role. If you would like to share that as well, then that would be great to understand whereabouts in your organisation you tend to focus and work. Excellent. Now then, Suchitra, I can see lots of questions from the audience, so let's move on. We'll take our next question to the panel.
Our next question is from Aditya. How do you, as a facilitator, promote participation and encourage hesitant individuals to join the conversation and share their thoughts?
The quiet people in the room are often the ones who are thinking things through. So, Paul, in your experience, how do you bring that value into the workshop or the meeting?
Yeah, well, there's always put one question on the post-it note, each of you, and then I'll come up to the board and present it. That way, everyone has a chance to put their questions forward, and everyone presents something. If you do an approach which is like, loudest shouter first, you're going to get the kind of extrovert type people. But if you've got the more introverted people who are kind of thinking, maybe have some kind of channel to allow them to come up with their ideas, a post-it note or something like that, and use those techniques to get everyone to bring their ideas.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you do kind of find that certain individuals in certain organisations will tend to dominate the conversation, don't you? So you do have to be super careful about it. Thank you very much indeed, Paul. That's a great technique to use. Melissa, your thoughts, please. Then we'll hear from Gary.
Thanks, Nick. For me, I think it's important to gain awareness as to who are those hesitant individuals in the room. And as a facilitator, it's number one, understanding who they are, understanding the environment that they're in. So is it a very political type environment where they're sort of waiting for someone else to say something first and then they take the lead from that? Or are they just an introvert? And I think it's important to understand who the people are and to create some open-ended questions and then ask for feedback from around the room. But most often than not, I find that attention on that person, making eye contact, drawing out their name in conversation or using them as an example, helps them to feel sort of included in the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much indeed, Melissa. Those directed questions, those invitations, explicit invitations to participate, very, very important. Gary, your thoughts, and then we'll go to Cath.
Yeah, sure. As it's part two, I've got a cheat for you listening. Here's my cheat. If there's up to 30 people, it's hard to do it if there's more than that. I research everyone that's in the meeting and try and find a couple of golden nuggets about their past, nothing too personal. And then I ask them about that in context to the topic. I'll say, for example, I noticed your first job was at McDonald's. What's the difference between customer service there and what you're doing today, or something like that? And that will bring out anyone. And then the second thing is, just think about a really big volume control. Your job as a facilitator is to turn down the loud ones and turn up the quiet ones.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's like having those faders, almost on a mixing desk, to be able to, manage that input. And also, sometimes the quiet voice can actually be the voice of common sense. I don't know if you find this, Gary, from time to time, but, so people will talk emotionally, perhaps about something, and then somebody quiet in the room will kind of come in with that common sense comment. Yeah, absolutely, which crystallizes the thinking. So brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Cath, your thoughts, please, then Malini.
Yeah, I'm going to build on some of the things that other panelists have already said. So I agree with Paul with regards to allow people to put their own thoughts onto a post-it. I have a tendency now not to use post-it notes, but to rather use very large pieces of paper, because it allows and encourage them to write big. That's another challenge when you're facilitating. They're using small pens and they're writing small. You can't read them from anywhere else in the room. But the concept of allowing people to just input their thoughts when they want to, rather than necessarily when the group wants them to, I think is a really important one. So I'd build on what Paul said with regards to post-its. Using pair and share works really well. So you pair people up and you ask them as a pair to come up with some ideas. That works exceptionally well for introverts who wouldn't necessarily speak in a larger group. But I do really like what Melissa said with regards to understanding who's in the audience. You do need to have an understanding of exactly what you need, who the boss is, who the chain of command is, for want of a better phrase, particularly in hierarchical organizations, understanding who won't speak. A previous facilitation I ran, the output was that they were going to smile more, and it came from the cleaners. They weren't going to invite the cleaners, but they ended up doing so. It was the health department. They ended up inviting the cleaners along, and it was they were all walking around with their head down in their notes, and they weren't looking or communicating with each other, and they were going to smile more. And that was the greatest output of the whole day, which sounds so minor, but it came from somebody who hierarchically wouldn't have spoken. She put it on a post-it very early in the day. It sneaked onto the board. I didn't take it because I didn't see it. She put it onto the board and everybody voted it up as such a simple idea.
Fantastic. I think that's really excellent. And it encourages us all to adopt the, famously quoted comment from NASA in the 1960s, when the person who was, swooping up was actually asked, what do you do here? Yep. And then gave that most eloquent reply, which was fantastic. Everybody is part of the same mission team. So thank you very much indeed. And Malini, your thoughts, please.
I'm really enjoying this conversation. There's so many, tried and tested tactics. Well, a couple of things that I would like to add. One is I use a range of different props, if you like, to encourage dialogue. And so, for example, I take Lego into some of my workshops, and then people can use, it gives them a very tactile sort of experience, right? As part of the conversation, and it works really well. And one other thing, and this is probably from my own cultural background, I try and normalize silence, right? Like, to have a good, meaningful conversation, it doesn't mean that you have to be, or someone has to be talking all the time. So building in pauses, time for people to reflect, is actually really helpful, because some people, and especially in some cultures, it is considered better if we actually spend a little bit of time thinking before we actually provide our input. So making allowance for that, normalizing that, is very important.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. It's the emotion of music. Silence actually brings you, gets you ready for the next moment, if you like, and whatever genre of music you really enjoy. Without any silence at all in it doesn't make any sense. So you need those silences, you need those punctuation marks, in these workshops, in these sessions, in order to be able to get the most value out of them. Completely agree with that. It's an exciting topic, and we've got a lot of people online who are joining in the conversation. So, here's a shout out to everybody who is online. What do you think so far? What are your thoughts, about what the panel is saying here about getting those quiet voices? Are you a quiet voice? Are you heard? Do you set out to try and bring in other people during your meetings and during your workshops to make sure that you get the intelligence of the crowd, if you like, from everybody, rather than just simply the opinion of the individual? Ranganath joins in the dance of ideas. The facilitator orchestrates harmony. Well, what a lovely phrase. So thank you very much indeed, Ranganath. Great way to put it, far more eloquently, actually, than I have been struggling to this morning. So thank you very much indeed. Suchitra, if we can, let's move on. We'll take our next question to the panel.
So we have a live question from Alison in Wales. Cath and Gary have just mentioned preparation for successful facilitation. How much preparation should be done to facilitate like a pro?
Okay. Now that we're going to get the little insights now. Now, do bear in mind, audience, that the panel are super experienced people. So I think they will have a kind of a turbocharged method, if you like, or a preferred method. But Cath, without giving away your, secret sauce, if you like, how much facilitation how much preparation rather, should a facilitator typically do? Start us off.
Well, quite a bit. A facilitator doesn't need to be the topic specialist. In fact, they're not the topic specialist. They're the process specialist. So the first thing you need to do is meet with the person that you are facilitating alongside, the topic specialist, to find out what they're trying to achieve in the meeting that you're running. That's a key meeting. And nearly always when I go into that first meeting, the ideas they've got are randomized. They haven't really given any consideration to what they're trying to get out of this meeting. They have no consideration to how many people are coming, what the logistics of the room will look like, when we're going to have a break, why people are in the room, all those sorts of questions. So my first activity is to talk with that lead of the topic area to try and find out exactly what they're trying to achieve, who they think is in the room, and then to start to simplify some of the topic that they have usually in a PowerPoint, because they've usually spent a lot of time preparing a PowerPoint to explain it to me, and then I trash it all. No, I don't quite trash it all, Nick. I'm not that harsh, but I do try to get them to simplify it, take out a whole host of slides. We don't need it to be this complex. We're trying to simplify it for the whole audience. And actually, they're not interested in us talking all the time. We're interested in their input, the audience's input, rather than just us talking. So for me, my first meeting is my meeting with the specialist that I'm facilitating for.
Thank you very much indeed. It's quite interesting, isn't it, how people who know the detail, of course, feel the nuance for every word that's on a comprehensive PowerPoint deck. is super important. And it is a real skill to be able to help that person, give up some of that word count, if you like, in favor of simplifying, to your point, and allowing a process to evolve during the session itself. So thank you very much indeed, Cath. Great start. Gary, your thoughts, please, and then we'll go to Paul.
The controversial thought from me, just don't rock up to facilitate a meeting. It feels because I don't have to present. I can just rock up. But that's actually, you should do the opposite. As Cath was saying, the preparation is massively important. The thing for me that's most important of all is to understand either the language or the objective of the meeting. What do people want to get out of the meeting? Because it's the same as when you present. What do you want someone to do as a result of that presentation? And when you're facilitating, what do you want as the outcome? So I spend a lot of time on understanding the people and what the business is trying to do, or what the meeting objectives are, the context of that. And then probably the most important thing for me is owning the agenda, because if I don't own the agenda, the meeting won't go well. So I own the agenda for the reasons that Cath has said, so I can check the content, but also make sure each session is going to be interesting and how it's going to work. And that's what I would do beforehand.
It's quite a lot, that, isn't it? And the that sense of ownership, being clear, especially with the more senior people, about their role and responsibilities versus your role and responsibilities kind of in that session, particularly with a new client, is a piece of careful work, clearly, that needs to be done in order to be able to manage their contribution and also set yourself up to succeed. Completely agree with that, Gary. Thank you very much indeed. Paul, your thoughts, please, then we'll go to Melissa.
Yeah, I mean, I did see one piece of guidance which said, 2 to 1, 2 hours for every 1 hour of facilitating. And I think the general message here is you do need to spend a bit of time getting yourself ready, understanding the subject matter, understanding the key issues, and then also sitting alongside that person that's engaging you to understand what they want you to get out of the session, so you actually meet the customer's requirements for the facilitation. Can be quite key. Sometimes meeting key people beforehand can be useful, depending on, availability and time. But, that it's moved from the idea that you just rock up and sort of do generic facilitation to actually being prepared and having enough knowledge of the subject to be credible in front of the group, but not being the expert.
Yeah, indeed. I think certainly a command of terminology, it's a little like the difference between learning a foreign language at school, perhaps, and then moving into the ability to listen and respond in that foreign language. So understanding specific terms, terminologies, these sorts of things. I think Cath also mentioned that earlier on. That's part of the basic preparation that you need, so that you understand all of those acronyms and, the way in which they all kind of plug and play together is absolutely right. Otherwise, as a facilitator, you may make some unwitting, mistake when you're doing it. So thank you, Paul. Very helpful. Melissa, and then Malini, please.
Thanks, Nick. I'm going to give you a formal answer, and then I'm going to give you a fairy answer. So the formal answer is, when you are facilitating for a group and you have to prepare, I usually make sure that I have enough things in my toolkit that will help me engage different kinds of audiences that I have at my disposal to also, communicate with them better. When it is in a meeting, I usually look at using different options of intention setting. That brings me to the fairy part of the answer of what is my wish for that meeting. So I usually try to set an intention, try to understand, what am I trying to get out of the session? And to Paul's point about not being the expert, I usually like to hold some curiosity. And I find that genuine curiosity brings authenticity, because if you're truly curious about finding out what other people want to say or what their opinions are, you then get a really great conversation going in the group.
I think you can tell. I agree, Melissa. I think you can spot a fake really easily, actually, whether it's online or in person. You could spot it. And people who do have a passion for getting to the heart of the matter, the radical truth, if that makes sense, then that's going to shine through, and people will appreciate that, and they will work with you in order to be able to deliver that outcome for sure. Thank you very much indeed. And I love that concept of the fairy element, which is the wish. What wish do I have, for this particular meeting? Great way to remember it. Malini, your thoughts, and then we're going to go back to Cath.
I have a tip for those who actually, work inside organizations. So you might be a business analyst or a project manager or a program manager, and you have to facilitate meetings or workshops. One of the things that I have found very useful is having conversations with people who are going to participate in the session, right? So you have like as part of your preparation, you actually have preliminary meetings with them. That will help you to understand what are some of the potential, challenges or concerns that they might raise during the session that you can then prepare for. It might be a little tricky to do this if you are actually a consultant who's being brought into, an organization from the outside to run a session. But if you are part of an organization, this is a way in which you can actually cultivate a relationship with the participants as well.
Yeah, indeed. It's a fantastic opportunity. If you're an individual contributor or a team leader within an organization, and to progress your career, developing these facilitation skills and becoming known as an honest broker within the organization is fantastic, because you get to meet all the senior people very quickly, and you soon have a reputation for being able to solve problems, even though what you're actually doing is a method, it's a technique, rather than actually knowing all of the answers yourself. So thank you, Malini. Great point. And Cath, final thoughts, please.
I'm so glad that Malini has brought in some of the groups that need this skill, such as the business analyst or the agile project manager, or the facilitator itself. It isn't only facilitators that need this skill. It is a whole host of trade groups that would really benefit from understanding how to facilitate fully. But the final point that I'd like to bring in is logistics. It sounds so simple, Nick, but make sure that the participants have somewhere to park, that the room's big enough to do the activities that you want to do, that you've brought along with you enough Post-it notes if you're using Post-its, enough Sharpie pens, enough dots, enough wall space. I mean, that sounds completely irrational, a wall space. But you work in UK, you work in some historic building, and they won't let you put anything on the walls. So how are you actually going to collect the information that you want to collect? So having an understanding of the space that you're talking about, having an understanding of where the catering is, what time it's arriving, what time lunch is, what time the mid-lunch break is. Do they need to leave at a certain time in order to get on the bus or the train or whatever? All of these logistics sound trivial, but the whole meeting will be ruined if you can't collect the data you're after, and those ideas, those awesome ideas that are going to come from the participants. If you don't collect them, then there's no value in the conversation. You haven't taken away the things you need. So for me, that other bit of preparation that we haven't yet talked about is make sure that you understand the logistics. You arrange those logistics and it works for what you want to do. And that might be the Lego kit that was mentioned. It might be the Post-it note that was mentioned. It might be the Sharpie. It could be a whole host of things, but think about the logistics of the room.
Thank you very much indeed. Really, really salient point. How many times have we arrived at a building to be shown to the room, and inside the room it's laid out theatre style, and if you had a cat, well, even the cat wouldn't opt into being swung around within it. So it's just not suitable for the kind of work that you had in mind in order to be able to deliver the desired outcome. I've often thought they're actually cats are the unwitting participants in that, but never mind. We'll come back to the Cat Protection League a little bit later, perhaps. In the meantime, Suchitra, your next question, if we may, to the panel.
Sure. So our next question is from Robert. How can a facilitator contribute to a safe environment in order to enhance the outcome of a meeting?
Now, Robert, I know, is asking this from a position of some strength. He himself is a very accomplished facilitator. So what are our thoughts on this? Now, safe environment can mean many things. So I'm looking for some different dimensions on this. Malini, from your perspective, what can we do as facilitators to help bring this about?
I have actually learned from observing facilitators who come in and they're quite judgmental, or they're very dismissive, and they're not listening to what is being said. And within a very short time, they create an environment which actually makes a number of people who are present actually shut up rather than opening up, which is the opposite of what what we would like to do. So I would say that as a facilitator, what I emphasize as the first thing is that I demonstrate respect for everyone who's present. I do this by actively listening to what is being said. I'm open to considering that people may have different styles of expression, right? And I'm willing to I'm sort of willing to work through any differences that might arise. Right? And I think demonstrating that patience and that openness is one of the keys to providing a safe environment.
Thank you very much indeed. Really good points. Melissa, your thoughts, and then we'll go to Cath.
I agree with everything that Malini said, and I'd like to add on to that. For me, creating a safe environment is about holding space for people. And when you think about what holding space would mean energetically, it's allowing people the time to express themselves, allowing people the time to go through whatever they need to. If there's a thought that needs to be thought, then being patient with people. Also understanding people with different opinions. You always have the louder person in the room and the quieter person in the room. So giving the louder person space and time to say what they need to, but at the same time creating boundaries for everybody as well, reminding people of what the ground rules are. And I think that's really important, to setting the ground rules, referring to them throughout the session is quite key for me. And just having empathy towards people, I really find that usually works.
Yeah, absolutely right. One thing that I don't know if you use this technique yourself, Melissa, at all, but taking frequent breaks, because if the rules need to be, if the participants rather need to be reminded of the rule, that's a great way to be able to zoom in on the individual, perhaps, or a couple of folks, who aren't playing by the rules. Just take a little break and have that quiet word. Thank you so much indeed. So let's go to Cath next, please, and then Paul.
So Nick, I'm coming back to logistics. I sound like a little bit of a broken record here, but I think that at the beginning of the session, when people are arriving, first of all, your choice of venue is hugely important. If you're trying to run a community group or a meeting that you want community groups to come into, don't put them into an environment that they find alien. They need to feel safe within that environment. And you, the facilitator, need to do that meet and greet at the very beginning. Make sure they've got somewhere to put their coats, make sure they know where the prayer room is, make sure they understand where the toilets are, all of those logistics pieces, so that they feel welcome and included in the room. And you haven't started the work at this point, but you are on task. So the first thing you've done is you've arranged the furniture in the way that you want it, not in that the manner that you talked about earlier. The second thing that you've done is you've met and greeted everybody. You've made sure they understand the air hostess piece of where the toilets are, the drinks are, what time they're going to eat, where they can pray, etc. All of that starts the safe environment. And because you've taken the time to speak to them at the very beginning, the chances are they feel more comfortable to come to you during the session to say, I need to leave, or I'm not sure I understand, or those types of comments. So it really is important to have taken this time at the front end. And some people will consider this before the meeting has started, but you're on task as the facilitator in this early period.
Thank you very much indeed. Great advice. And Paul, final thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that often how you reflect when people talk, so reflect back what they're saying so that they feel heard. And I think that if some people are talking over the top of other or ignoring them, you can actually be quite forceful in pulling the viewpoint of the other person's forward. So you make sure that they are heard and no one's talking over the top of anyone else.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, great answers, panel. Thank you so much, Robert, for asking that question about creating that safe environment, without which, of course, it's unlikely that you're going to get a full contribution from everybody in the room. So it's really a fundamental prerequisite for getting the very most out of that session. Let's move on, Suchitra, if we can. We'll take our next question to the panel.
We have a question from Sarah in Wales. Is facilitating virtually just the same as in person, or are different skills required?
So how would you do things a little bit differently? Are there accommodations? Gary, you've done a lot of both. What are your thoughts?
To be honest, I prefer face-to-face, but the world we're in is absolutely a different skill, because you've got to make sure you get people to participate all the way through. The way I do it at the beginning is I actually say hello to every single person that comes in, even if it's 50 of them. And so they know that I can see them and I'm talking to them. And then the key to the big difference is asking questions all the time, that people don't go on mute and do their emails. And there's lots of skills required, but it's a completely different engagement, and you've got to have a bit of humor to keep it engaging for people. That would be my small number of tips to get started.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. I find that it's too easy without cameras for people to be not present. They're in the virtual meeting, but they're not necessarily fully present in the virtual meeting, if that makes sense. So, having that presence and being able to, at a higher frequency, kind of engage with each of them becomes a very, very important element of the dynamic, particularly at the beginning. Cath, your thoughts, please, then Melissa.
Yeah, I really like what Gary's just said about make sure that you've introduced yourself to everybody. I mean, it's really great to check their comms as well. But the key difference between facilitating online and facilitating in face-to-face is, well, frankly, everything. It's a different skill in my book. You need to be technologically proficient online. You need to be you need to be physically proficient when you are face-to-face. They are different types of skills. But if we stick with the virtual piece, you need an understanding of the comms package you're using, whether it be Zoom or Teams or whatever it is, Google Meets. But you need a clear understanding of that, how you're going to put people in breakout rooms, how they're going to communicate with you, how they're going to chat with you. You also need to be able to collect data. That will be in a different way. So maybe you're going to use a Miro board or a whiteboard that goes with the application that you're choosing to use, how you're going to gather all of that information in. You need to also be able to communicate with individuals on a one-to-one basis. And again, that's a technology piece. All of the tech can do that, but are you comfortable doing that as well? So you've probably got at least 2-3 screens up. You're very much in the room. I think it's much harder to facilitate effectively virtually. It's not my preferred option. I'd prefer to be in the room, but it is a completely different skill, and you've got to understand your engagement strategies that you're going to use, the technology behind those engagement strategies, and the overarching technology of the platform that you're using.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Just to that very last point, I would say you need to immerse yourself in the meeting platform of the client. Yeah. So you cannot blink, you cannot hesitate. If you don't know how to spin up breakout rooms and manage, different settings and cope with different releases of the software and so on and so on and so on. Both Microsoft Teams and Zoom are set up in particular ways in organizations, and the capability that you might have on your account may be very different to that
Absolutely.
of your client. So you really do need to immerse yourself in that and understand what the freedoms and the constraints might be to the techniques that you would prefer to use. Thank you very much indeed, Cath. Let's go to Melissa and then we'll hear from Gary.
Thanks, Nick. Just to build on to what you just mentioned now about the technology, I find that it's usually very helpful to get an assistant or somebody that can aid you from the client, because they've got access to all of the different features. They also understand it a little bit better, and they know the people. So it usually helps run a little bit smoothly, having somewhere there. And then to Gary's point on humor, I definitely agree that when you are doing facilitation remotely, it helps to bring in a little bit of wit and humor. And I'll add on to that by saying that storytelling is really great to hold people's attention, because I find that's the true key in getting people to pay attention, to focus, taking a lot more breaks than you would in a live setting, and then making sure that you try and look at activities or activity-based facilitation really helps me. And I've gotten some great results using those skills, although there's tons more.
Yeah, absolutely. Activity-based facilitation is a lovely phrase to think about it. You know, if you're facilitating, then you want people to be doing things, not sitting passively and listening, because their mind will naturally drift away onto other more pressing matters in their world. Not in your world, but in their world, it's bound to happen. Thank you so much, Melissa. Great advice there. Gary, final thoughts.
Yeah, just a controversial one again. Just avoid breakout rooms. I just don't think they work. I think you're better off, if you've done your research up front, you're better off pulling people into the conversation or joining the dots from people because you know that they can add something to it. Just avoid breakout rooms. It just causes stress. It's a bit like a party where the party was going great and then people went into the kitchen. You just lose them.
Okay, all right. Well, we might come back to some thoughts on breakout rooms a little bit more in a future episode. But it's a really good point, Gary. If you've got a good technique running, okay, then don't spoil it just on the basis of not being able to take that decision on the fly around, okay, we're going to hold this group together because together the dynamic is working really, really well. So yeah. Good advice. Thank you very much indeed, panel. Well, time is beating us again on this Monday episode. Suchitra, I think we've got time for one final question to the panel.
Sure. So our final question is from Nick. What are your favorite items inside your facilitation kit that you take to face-to-face workshops?
All right. Now then, we're going to delve into the Mary Poppins carpet bag, all right, of everybody on the panel. I'm going to ask them, what are your facilitation essentials? What do you have in the kit bag, so to speak, for those face-to-face workshops? And of course, any brand names, then, well, non-branded equivalents are always available. Cath, why don't you mention 2 items that you might have in your facilitation kit?
I'm going to say something that probably others won't have thought of, but I always make sure I've got an empty tube. I can roll up any whiteboard paper and put the whiteboard paper in the tube afterwards. And the reason behind that, Nick, very short story, was I was facilitating a session, an incredibly important session in Bristol, which is about an hour away from where I live. And I'd gone by train. And I had a lot of kit in my hand. I had my handbag. It's not a handbag, it's a metal box full of my facilitation kit. I had my computer on my back. I had a whiteboard in the other hand. And then I had all of the data that I'd collected. I got back on the train and I left the data that I'd collected on the top shelf of the train. The whole of that meeting, the data was on the train. I got off the station and I went, pass, realized I'd left it on the train. Now, what do I leave behind? Do I leave my facilitation kit on the platform? Do I get back on the train? I jumped on the train and got the kit. Thankfully, I had enough time to grab it and get back off again. but make sure you've got a tube that can carry all of the data that you're collating if the client wants that data collated for them. Some clients don't. They're happy to have the raw data, but this client wanted all of that data collated for them, and I'd nearly left it. So for me, the number one piece of kit is a giant tube, probably like an art easel collection piece that I can carry all of the data I've collected in.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Great advice. And I think we've all had those heart-stopping moments, public transport at some point in our careers. Very good. Melissa, what do you have in your kit bag?
So Nick, I've got two things, and one also has a story. So sticky notes is my go-to. I use them for almost all my facilitation in person. And then I usually take a talking stick. But along the way, in one of my facilitation sessions, I'd forgotten the talking stick. And what I found in my bag was stress balls. So I then said to the group, well, this is going to be the talking ball. And mind you, it really got everybody going, because whenever the executive got it or wanted to say something, they're like, you don't have the talking ball. And that then led me to just keep at having talking balls in my session.
Fantastic. I can see a whole sub-brand emerging out of that. So thank you very much indeed, Melissa. Okay, Gary, your thoughts, please, and then Malini.
Yeah, the emergency kit for me is a Bluetooth speaker, because I always open up with music. I have a dongle because I need to connect to my computer, and always whiteboard markers because I've turned up many places that don't have them, and blue tack so I can stick something up on the wall if I need to, and that's it, really.
Fantastic, fantastic. I do agree that sound in most rooms is so empowering, makes such a difference, especially when work is actually going on as well, not even just at the beginning, but you can set the tone, can't you, by using music and using different sounds at different times. So excellent advice. Thank you. Not actually explicitly thought about the Bluetooth speaker, but it's such a useful thing to be able to have. It's really brilliant. Malini, your thoughts?
So thank you, Gary, for mentioning music, because that was going to be one of my things as well. Because you can use the music to influence the mood in the room, So late afternoon, when people are starting to sort of feel a little drowsy or a bit tired, you can use music to sort of pep the atmosphere up a bit. The other thing that I have, which I absolutely love, are a set of markers that are, I think they're called low odor, right? So you know how those markers usually have a very strong smell, which can be quite overwhelming for some people. So I actually found, particularly through my diversity and inclusion work, that for certain people that can actually detract from their ability to participate in the conversations. So I make sure I carry these. And of course, I love Lego. I can't not have Lego in my workshop, so I take them along too.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Thank you so much indeed. I still have a drawer full of individual packets of Lego with certain numbers of blocks in them of different styles and sizes and so on. So everybody has the same Lego kit to begin a session with. It's sometimes quite important, actually. Otherwise, there may be disappointment. And final thoughts, Cath?
I've upgraded my facilitation kit recently because I was working with somebody who had the best facilitation kit, so I needed to upgrade. And I've discovered a company called Pinpoint, who I've known for quite some time, but they do the best facilitation kit that you can get. They have wholesalers all throughout the world, but Pinpoint, which have large post-it notes, that have great pens, they have really Gucci pin boards, they have feedback forms. They do a huge amount of different facilitation resources. They would be my go-to with regards to kit, and they will give you a very handy little case that you can put all of this kit in that's subdivided off, and it always gets people that are into stationery like me will instantly come and want to look at, delve in your kit. But there is a bit of a room for my stress balls, for my Lego kit, all of those types of things, if I am putting that type of activity in there. But I think it's good to have things on the table for people to fiddle with, which comes back to Melissa's stress balls. I think that there's some real advantage, not just for a talking ball, Melissa, but also, something for people to do something with their hands. For some people, that's a really important part of it. So that all goes in my trolley bag that now gets trundled along with me.
Absolutely right. Well, thank you very much indeed, panel. Wonderful insight into the essentials, not just in the preparation phase before the meeting actually begins, but also setting the scene and setting the tone of the session, and then enabling everybody to participate through the use of different physical materials. And if you are working online, there are a huge range of resources and tools and techniques available to you. And don't forget as well that you have the ability to connect with the panel via their LinkedIn profiles. Now, if you want to do that, then do have a look at apmginternational.com, click on the events page, and then you find today's event. And there will be a little link through to each panelist's LinkedIn profile there. So if you have listened today and you felt that somebody has said something that really resonates with you, then please do reach out to them individually and make your LinkedIn connection there. Well, that's really good. Well, thank you so much, panel. You brought us right up to the top of the hour. So let's hear some closing remarks on today's show from everybody in today's group. Paul, can you start us off, and then we'll hear from Cath?
Yeah, look, it's had some fantastic questions, and I've really enjoyed the insights from other members of the groups and all techniques. And that actually shows another thing about, good facilitation. Observe and watch other people, see what they do, steal their techniques.
Absolutely agree with that. We are all little magpies out there finding those small shiny things and then adding them to our tools and technique kit bag. Cath, your reflections on today, and then Malini.
I think it's been a really interesting session. Thanks, Nick, for the invite to join it. I think that the biggest problem with the English language is that we use the word facilitation in so many different ways. And facilitation of a meeting is such a different skill to facilitating a journey or facilitating in a classroom. That they're different skills. We're talking about a very specific skill here in facilitation. And as Melissa said early on, there are so many different organizations that can benefit from trained facilitators. I'd really encourage people to consider that this is a skill that they need to practice, probably certify in, and continually practice, because you will learn from others as you carry on this performance, this activity. And it really does need consideration, not just bowl up in the meeting. That would worry me if people were thinking that they could facilitate in that manner.
Thank you so much, Cath. Some great advice. And Malini?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of this conversation. On top of all the tips that we have shared, I'd like to also add, I think it's very important to cultivate the skill in asking great questions, because that's a really powerful way to drive conversation, to nudge the discussion in a certain way, and to open up people's thinking.
Thank you very much indeed. Asking better questions. Yeah, great advice. Melissa, your thoughts, please. Then we'll go to Gary.
Thanks, Nick. I've learned a few things from my fellow panelists myself today, so really enjoyed being here. And my closing comments would be, just be present when you're facilitating, whether it's a meeting or a workshop or training. Be present. Enjoy the session for yourself, and try to learn something from the people and the other humans around you. You'll find that when you get something out of it, everybody has a great time. So
absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Melissa, for your contribution today. And Gary?
Yeah, thanks for the great session today. A good facilitator is a catalyst and a guide. A catalyst has energy, participation in debate, and a guide, visionary, translator, and a mind reader. They're my tips. And thanks for inviting me. It's been a great session.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Gary. We really appreciate you being able to join today. Thank you for your contribution. Suchitra, a really fascinating insight again into the world of facilitation and the difference that having professional certification can make to the outcome of a meeting or a workshop. Your reflections?
Absolutely, Nick. I love the insights, especially the favorite items shared by the panelists on their kits that they carry to the facilitation workshops. So I really enjoyed the show. And of course, we have plenty more questions to look at for the future.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And May, to your point, yes, of course, the recordings are available online all of the time, and you'll have a bookmarked version available on YouTube very soon. Well, thank you very much indeed to our producers online, of course, our audience who asked the questions, and also to the panel for giving us your shared insight into the expert world of facilitation and how to bring out that superpower that I genuinely feel that we all possess, actually, and we need to do it in our own styles. And there's been some great hints and tips about how you might go about that, preparing, owning the agenda, and delivering additional value to your organization during the sessions. So thank you very much indeed, and well done, everybody. Over on the APMG International website, you may, of course, search for the answers to 2,300 previously asked questions. It's totally free of charge, and it connects you with experts from all over the world. Don't forget that you may also listen to the audio versions of all of the shows on your preferred podcast platform. Just search for APMG International, level up your career, and you will find us easily enough. Looking ahead now to what's coming next on Friday the 17th at 2 p.m. UK time, we're going to continue our exploration into how to become a truly digital leader. So do join us for that. And on Monday, the 20th, we're delving into how to become an agile change agent. That is, of course, at 8 a.m. UK time. Don't forget, this week, Big Data Days is running through our accredited organisation, Subban. That's happening in Southeast Asia, but it's available online. Do have a little search for that and see if you can't sign up for some of those sessions. Don't forget, you may also head over to our YouTube channel. Please do give this video a like. It really does help other people find and discover the content, and subscribe to the channel to bring more value into your inbox. Just ask finally, and we'll send you a summary of what's coming up and how you too can join us here on the panel and level up your career with APMG. Thanks very much indeed, everybody. Take care. We'll see you next time.